Hi there, business owner. Do you want a better understanding of business finance, what your numbers actually mean, and stories of the highs and lows of business, where I'll be sharing my tips and tricks every week? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. As always, I'm your host, and this week we're going to talk about colour psychology and the psychology of colour in business. Now, if you haven't listened to last week's episode on branding yet, go back and listen to that one because this one follows on really nicely. I'm really excited for this one because the psychology of colour in business and the colour psychology used in your branding is an extra element to really help you get your message across to your ideal client and your ideal audience. So let's get into it. So most of you, when you chose your business branding and the colours in your business branding or your personal brand, depending which one we're talking about this week, you would have probably chosen a colour because of your favourite. You would have probably chosen a colour that relates to you in some way. And without realising subconsciously, we do use colour psychology every single day. And the emotions and the feelings that are linked towards certain colours are very evident in popular brands. If you think of companies such as McDonald's and the big golden arches of the M, if that was blue or red instead of yellow, I don't think it would have the same feel. However, red is very commonly associated with increase in appetite. So the fact that McDonald's have a red background with the yellow M signifies how the colour psychology they're using is relating to their audience. Now, later in this episode, I'm going to go through the basic colours in the colour wheel and what they relate to. You can find lots of information online and a lot of different opinions on what some of the emotions, particularly linked to colours, are. But you need to go with what's right for you and what feels right for you. And what I will say is don't let colour psychology prevent you from choosing a colour in your branding if it feels like it really fits. When I first started ABCS UK, I went for a blue. Blue is signified as very trustworthy and very corporate. And if you think of the majority of the technology startups and accountancy and bookkeeping financial software companies, they all predominantly use blue. Not all, but the majority of them use blue because that is a very corporate, very businessy, very trustworthy colour in the colour psychology. And then when I rebranded in September, I needed to keep the blue because I felt it was really important for me, but I needed to add a bit more of the direction the business was going in. So we added in the pinks because we feel the feminine feel. I work with a lot of female business owners and female directors. So the pink sort of was a nod to them, a nod to myself as a female business owner. And yellow is my favourite colour, but yellow is a colour that reminds me of happiness and makes me think of the sun and makes me think of summer and makes me feel happy. And that is the emotion that I wanted to get across to my ideal client and audience, is that working with me, working with ABCS UK, is happiness. So maybe you've chosen your branding colours, you've been working with them a while, or maybe you're just starting out and want to decide on what your branding colours will be. Yes, it's important to look at the colour psychology of what each of those colours represent and make sure that they are in line with your business and your business's values and goals and will also resonate with your audience. But at the end of the day, colour psychology is one thing, but it's not the be-all and end-all of owning a business and your business design. I've changed. A lot of businesses will develop and change over time, and that's also okay. I feel like I say this almost every week on the podcast. It is okay to change. It is okay to pivot. So don't stress too much about this. This is for your information. Take with it and deal with it what you will. But I really hope that it gives you a better understanding of other brands on the market. And when I explain to you in a minute about all the different traits that each colours have in the psychology of colour, I will also mention 2 or 3 businesses that they relate to. And what I often find is the more I learn about business, I can see it from an outsider's perspective when I am looking at other companies' branding. When I see advertisements on the telly or on the radio or I can see a special offer that a business is putting out, or I can see we've had quite a lot of emails, or all the restaurants and pubs have started pushing for bookings for Christmas, and they're saying if you book before the end of October, you'll get an extra voucher to use in January. It's all marketing, and when you get behind the visor of a business and understand it, you see other people doing it, and it sort of gives you the confidence in your own business. So I'm hoping this psychology of colour explanation will help you feel more confident with your business's branding, your personal branding, and how you portray yourself and your business to your ideal client and your audiences moving forward. So I really hope this helps. So I'm going to go through the primary colours first, and you think of red and it makes you think of strength, it makes you think of boldness, power, maybe even anger. What emotion does red bring up for you? You need to think of brands such as Virgin Media, Butlins, the hotel company, they use red branding. McDonald's use red as well as yellow. As I said, it can increase appetite and stimulate appetite as an emotion inside people. So red is a colour that can give those sorts of emotions. And then in contrast, you go to the yellow, which is more about joy, optimism, warmth, energy, the sun. You think of companies, Ferrari have a yellow branding background. You have Snapchat, which is linked to joy. The McDonald's of the gold M. So the yellow mixed with the red, the mix of the two emotions is what they are driving in their branding. And then you go to blue. Blue is very much associated with trust, loyalty, security, which again is the reason why I went for that with ABCS UK. You can think of companies, IBM, Xero, the accounting software. A lot of the business and communications and technology companies use blue. You've got IBM, people like that. And then you go into the other colours that are on the main colour wheel. So you have green. Green is associated with environment, freshness, fertility. Companies that use green, Subway have a green and yellow. So Subway, I think the freshness is obviously that element of the branding and the colour psychology used with that one. Then you've got orange, which is very much associated with courage, confidence and friendliness. The people at Dex, the receipt capture software that we use in ABCS UK, use orange branding. And when you look across the board at the different bookkeeping and accountancy practices out there in companies, very few use that orange branding. And sometimes by using a colour psychology that matches well with you for your branding that others in your field do not, will only help you stand out and be more visible and seen by your ideal clients and audience more. And they begin to recognise that you're the one that uses that orange branding. So that's also something worth keeping a note of. And then I'm going to go to purple. Purple is very much associated with luxury, royalty. You know, the Queen was always very much associated with that rich royal purple. Wealth and wisdom and ambition is also commonly associated with purple. Yahoo, the brand Yahoo, use purple in their branding. And then you've got the pink, which isn't on every colour wheel. So if you go and search the psychology of colour, pink's not always on there. But pink is very maternal, very feminine. And I think most companies that have an element of pink in them, so the six-figure bookkeeper, they have pink in their branding, and it's that feminine, because 78% of bookkeepers are female, as we learnt at our annual summit earlier in the week. It's not always on the colour wheel, and it's still an important colour to think about when you're thinking about your branding. As I said, it's in ABCS UK's branding now. I feel like it's very important to me. So I think that one's also very helpful. And then following on from the purple of the luxury field, we've got the golds and the silvers. So gold is again very much related to wealth, wisdom, tradition. Companies that use gold branding are not as common. I think sometimes they can be misconstrued for yellow or orange. Again, the shade of that colour you use also can have different feelings associated with it. So when you go to gold, it can often be seen as yellow, it can often be seen as orange. With yellow, there's pale yellow, there's bright yellow, there's a mustard yellow, there's There's so many different elements to this, so it's important to go away and look at what suits you and what's relevant to you. Silver is quite often associated with high-tech, very technology-related brands. It's seen as quite glamorous, quite sleek and sophisticated. If you think of Apple, with the silver apple, that's probably one of the most popular ones that you can think of with the silver branding. But again, can be seen as grey, specifically if you are looking at it on a product that doesn't have any metallic on it, then it can look as more grey than silver, which has a different colour psychology. Then you've got black. Black is seen as formal. It's also seen as elegance and prestige, but also protection. So security companies will quite often use black. Obviously, all the HMRC and governmental institutes use black and white as their branding, and there is a psychology to that as well. And finally, brown. Brown is quite earthy. It's often seen as friendly, but robust, grounding, earthly. And I can think of UPS, who have their yellow branding or gold branding mixed with the brown. And again, the feelings that come up associated to that. And UGG, if you think of UGG boots, those company, they use brown, which I feel is probably more related to the fact that they're sheepskin and they are sheep. I feel like that's the sort of the Australian connotation to that one. That's my opinion. And again, how I feel about each colour on the colour wheel and how I perceive branding and why certain companies have used those brandings, that is entirely my opinion, and you will have your own. The main thing is when you're deciding your own branding for your personal brand or your business brand, is that the message you want to portray may not necessarily be the message that they receive, but you can only do your part, and that is by expressing yourself, expressing your business in the best way you see fit with all the information that you have available. And above all else, it just needs to be memorable. The colour needs to be memorable, that visible, that colour that when people see it, they go, that's ABCS UK. I was at the Bookkeeper Summit on Monday for my professional body, and I was talking to Zoe, actually, at the Six Figure Bookkeeper, and she says, whenever I see your branding, your profile photo, you remind me of The Circle. If anybody saw that programme on Channel 4, The Circle, it was like a messaging thing where they didn't actually see each other and some people pretended to be people they weren't. But that circle, you can see the circle on my profile photo and on my branding, which is a mixture of a gradient of the blues, the pinks and the yellows that are now formed my business branding. But that is what reminds her of me and my branding and ABCS UK. And that visibility and that recognition means that she could be watching The Circle should it come back on ITV or Channel 4 again, and she'll instantly think of ABCS UK, and that is the impact you want your branding to have. So I hope this has been a useful episode. It's been quite fact-packed this week. If you haven't listened to last week's on branding, please go ahead and do. As always, if you like this, please do like, rate, review and subscribe. The more people that I can get this podcast out to, the more business owners I can help. And the whole point of me doing this is so that we can all build better businesses together. I'll see you next week. And that brings us to the end of another week of the 3Bs podcast with Stephanie. Thank you so much for listening. I'd really appreciate it if you could like, subscribe, rate and review this podcast wherever you are listening to it, so that I can reach more business owners and help them build better businesses. See you next week for the next episode.